You know that moment when you're riding and the rain comes down sideways so hard you can barely see the road ahead? Your visor's fogging up, you're squinting, the asphalt's slick under your tires, and you're thinking about nothing but getting where you're going. That's what I was thinking about when Truck tapped my shoulder and pointed. We were coming down Morrison Street on a Tuesday afternoon in October. Temperature was dropping, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones even when you're wearing leather. The whole convoy was running together that day. 12 bikes, all of us heading back from the warehouse district. We'd been doing a supply run for one of our community programs. Nothing fancy. Just bikers doing what we do. Moving supplies, making runs, being useful. I was third in the line when everything changed. Truck, he's our lead rider, been on bikes for 42 years, and he slowed down. That's not like Truck. Truck doesn't slow down for weather. He slows down for reasons. When Truck slows, we all slow. Diesel pulls up beside him, and I can see them both looking at something in the blur of the rain. The rest of us follow suit, the whole convoy downshifting like a single organism, which is what happens when you've ridden together long enough. You don't need to talk about it. You just know. And that's when I saw her. She was maybe a block ahead on the sidewalk, maybe 120 on the scale, soaking wet, carrying 2 grocery bags that looked like they weighed more than she did. Her raincoat was the color of old concrete, patched in 3 different places with duct tape and determination. Her hair was plastered against her head, steel gray and thin. She wasn't moving fast, couldn't move fast, but she was moving. Each step was deliberate, careful, like someone who'd learned the hard way that falling wasn't an option anymore. I'd never seen anything quite like it. And I've ridden for 47 years. Truck cut the engine and dismounted before the rest of us even registered what was happening. That got our attention. We all lined up our bikes and killed the engines, and suddenly there was just rain. Rain and the sound of this woman's footsteps on wet concrete. She hadn't even noticed us yet, hadn't heard the bikes. She was locked in on one thing, getting home. Here's what you gotta understand about the road. It teaches you something that nothing else can teach you. It teaches you that you see people, really see them. And once you see them, you can't pretend you didn't. You can't ride past. It's not about being a hero. It's about understanding that some people have been invisible for so long that they've started to believe it themselves. Truck walked toward her. And here's the thing about Truck. He moves like he's not trying to scare anybody, which is probably the hardest thing for a 6'3" man with a compass tattoo on his neck and 42 years of road written into his face to manage. He put his hands out, palms open, like he was surrendering to her instead of approaching her. "Ma'am," he said. Just one word, just ma'am. She looked up, and I saw something shift in her eyes. Fear first. That's natural. A woman in her 90s, soaked in rain, suddenly surrounded by 12 bikers in leather and chrome. Fear's the reasonable response. But then something else moved across her face. Resignation. Like she'd been half expecting something to go wrong today, and here it was. "I'm fine," she said. Her voice was thin but steady, the kind of steady that comes from long practice at being fine. "Just heading home." "I can see that," Truck said, and he smiled, which is not something Truck does often. "Let us take those for you." "I've got them." 4 words. A whole fortress built into 4 words. "I know you do," Truck said, and he didn't move closer. He just stood there, respecting her space, respecting the boundaries she'd drawn. "But we're heading that direction anyway. No trouble to us. Where are you headed?" She studied him for a long moment. The rain kept falling, drops hammering on helmet visors and the leather of our jackets. Diesel had walked up beside Truck by now, and Quinn was coming around from the other side. We weren't crowding her, but we were present. We were showing her we weren't going anywhere. "Elm Street," she finally said. "The Blue House, 3 blocks east. Perfect, Truck said. That's practically our way. It wasn't our way. We were heading toward the highway, the opposite direction entirely. But a lie spoken out of kindness is sometimes the most honest thing a man can say. He reached for one of her bags, moving slow, telegraphing every movement. She watched his hand come toward her like she was watching a hawk that might dive at any moment. But his hand was gentle, and his eyes were tired in a way that had nothing to do with the rain. She let go. Quinn took the other bag, and we could see her relax just a degree. Not much, just enough. The tension didn't leave her shoulders, but something shifted. Some invisible thing about surrender. I'm Truck, he said. That's Diesel, Quinn, and that's Dutch back there on the big Harley Davidson. I tipped my chin. Didn't say anything yet. Sometimes it's better not to say anything. Sometimes you just show up and let your presence do the talking. She told us her name was Vivian. Not Vivian Johnson or Vivian anything else. Just Vivian. Like she'd spent so long introducing herself only when necessary that she'd learned to shed the extra. Vivian. That was enough. We started walking toward her house, 3 blocks east down Morrison Street, and the whole convoy moved slow to keep pace with her. That's a strange sight, I'm sure. 12 motorcycles cruising at 5 miles per hour behind a woman in a patched raincoat. A couple of cars passed us, drivers doing double takes, probably thinking there was an accident or something. But there wasn't. There was just this old woman walking home with bikers carrying her groceries and making sure she didn't fall. She moved like she was 70. Every step deliberate. Every movement calculated to preserve balance. She'd probably fallen before. You learn to assume that when you're around someone that age. They've fallen, and they know what it costs. How much longer? Vivian asked after the first block. I couldn't tell if she was tired or just uncomfortable with the silence. Another 2 blocks, Truck said. You doing all right? I'm managing. There it was again. That word. Manage. From actually caring. You said you from actually caring. You said you've been there 43 years. Vivian nodded. Since my husband passed, he built that house, built most of it himself. It wasn't much when we got it, but he had the hands for it, you know? He could take something broken and make it whole again. That's a gift, Diesel said quietly. It was. I wish I had it. I've been trying to hold it together ever since he left, but wood rots and things break, and sometimes you can't keep up with it all. We turned onto Elm Street, and the blue house came into view. Even from a distance, even in the rain, you could tell something was wrong. The whole structure seemed to be settling under some invisible weight. The front porch was sagging on one side like a ship listing. One of the shutters was hanging by a single nail, and the front door was hanging by a single hinge, angled open like the house itself was yawning, exposing something it had been trying to hide. The gaps around the frame were visible from where we stood. Truck and Diesel exchanged a look that I couldn't quite read, but I knew what it meant. This was worse than what we'd expected from a distance. How long has the door been like that? Diesel asked. His voice is quiet, which always surprises people. A man that size shouldn't have a quiet voice, but he does. 3 years, maybe 4. It doesn't really matter. I'm careful with the winds. I prop it shut when the weather turns bad. 3 years. This woman had been going in and out of her house through a door that barely hinged, in a house that had all kinds of wrong happening to it, and she was saying it didn't matter. Vivian, Quinn said, and there was something different in his voice, something harder. Does the back door work? Yes, the back door's fine. I use that most days. Then we're not using the front door anymore, all right? We're gonna fix that. She looked at Quinn like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. Sometimes people know when they can't fight anymore. We walked inside. The interior was cold in a way that cold shouldn't be allowed to exist. The walls were holding their breath. The furniture was old but clean, arranged with the kind of precision that speaks of someone imposing order on chaos because order is all you can control. There was a smell underneath everything, not bad, but stale. Old house smell. Closed-up smell mixed with something that might have been mothballs, the kind of smell that comes from keeping things tight and sealed against the world. The living room had a hospital bed set up in one corner, next to the radiator. Blankets were folded carefully on top. Next to it was a chair with a lamp bent at an awkward angle to provide reading light. This woman's entire life had condensed down to one corner of one room. "You sleeping down here?" Diesel asked. "The stairs are getting difficult. It's easier this way." The kitchen was the thing that got me, really got me. We stood there, Truck and Diesel and Quinn and me, and we looked at her kitchen, and nobody said anything because there wasn't anything to say. The cupboards were mostly empty. The refrigerator was humming along with maybe a quarter-gallon of milk, a container of butter, some mustard, and a half-full jar of mayo. The freezer had nothing in it. On the counter were the groceries from the bags we'd just carried, 2 cans of soup, half a loaf of bread, and a container of peanut butter. There was also a single onion and what looked like 2 potatoes, both with skins starting to wrinkle. That was Tuesday's groceries for a woman in her early 90s, to the top shelf, and I could see her to the top shelf, and I could see her wince with the effort. 2 cans of tomato soup went up there. Then she opened the bread box and placed the loaf of bread inside carefully, like it was made of something precious. Diesel watched her do this, his jaw tightening, and then he disappeared into the living room. We could hear him moving around, looking at things, checking the walls, running his hand along the radiator, and then his footsteps came back. He moved toward the thermostat on the wall and just stared at it. "When's the last time you had heat?" he asked. "The furnace works fine in the winter," Vivian said. "It's October. I'm asking when you last turned it on." A pause. I watched her hands still on the peanut butter container. She was doing something with that container that didn't need doing, taking extra time, delaying. "I keep it for when it gets really cold." Diesel walked over to the thermostat and pressed his hand against the wall next to it. Then he looked back at her. "Ma'am," Diesel said, and his voice was still quiet, but it had shifted into something else now, something harder and sadder at the same time. "It's 54 degrees in your living room. The thermostat's set to 60. It's October, and you're wearing a sweater indoors. You're living in a house that's falling apart, and you're eating soup and bread. That's not managing. That's surviving." Vivian turned to face us. I was expecting tears. I was expecting her to crumble. People crumble when they're found out, when someone sees the thing they've been hiding from. But she didn't crumble. She straightened up a little bit. Her eyes got harder, the way they do when someone's been holding something for so long that the holding is all they know. "I manage," she said. "I've been managing for 43 years. I don't need—" "This isn't about need," Truck said. And when Truck uses that tone, things tend to stop moving and pay attention. "This is about right. This is about whether we're going to walk out of here and leave you living like this. This is about looking in the mirror tomorrow and being able to say, 'We saw you, and we turned away.' You don't know me." "We do now," Quinn said. And then, quieter, his voice shaking a little bit. "My grandmother lives alone in Minnesota. No family nearby. Nobody checks on her. I think about that sometimes, especially on days like this. I think about her carrying groceries home in the rain, and nobody's there to help. I think about her being too proud to ask for anything. And then I think about her being here, in this cold, eating bread and soup, and I just can't leave that alone. I won't." Vivian looked at Quinn like she was seeing him for the first time. Really seeing him. A young man with tattoos and a leather jacket, and genuine fear in his eyes about his grandmother somewhere in Minnesota, and the understanding that there might not be anybody to stop and help her. "I don't want your pity," Vivian said, but her voice had changed. The fortress was cracking. "This isn't pity," Truck said. "This is what family does, and you're family now." "Sit down," Diesel said. Not unkind, just firm. "Sit down at that table and tell us what you need. Not what you're managing with, not what you can scrape by on. What do you actually need?" Vivian moved slowly to the kitchen table. There were 3 chairs around it. She sat in one of them like she was moving through water. We stood there, and for a moment it felt like we were all holding our breath. She told us things. She told us her husband had been dead for 43 years, and after the funeral, people had come around for the first month, and then that had stopped, and then people had become fewer and fewer until there weren't any people anymore. She told us her daughter and sister called once a month, but they had lives in other cities that didn't have room for her. One was dealing with a sick husband, the other had grandchildren, and grandchildren were exhausting. She told us the roof had been leaking for 2 years, and she'd put buckets under it, and sometimes she had to move them when the rain came hard. She told us her joints didn't work like they used to, and stairs were becoming a problem, so she was sleeping downstairs in the living room now, which was fine, except she couldn't shower anymore because the shower was upstairs. She told us she was on a fixed income, and the house ate more money every year, and she had to make choices: heat or food, maintenance or medication, staying or leaving. We're simple. You do what you can. You were simple. You do what you can. You don't ask. You manage. Truck pulled out his phone and called people. Numbers he knew. People he knew. He told them we had a situation, and he needed electricians and carpenters and somebody with a truck and supplies. He didn't ask if they could come help. He told them we needed them, and everybody said yes. That's what you learn after riding with people for 20, 30, 40 years. When one of you needs something, all of you need something. Listen, I'm going to be straight with you about something. People see the leather and the chrome, and they think they've got us figured out. They think we're looking for trouble, or we're running from something, or we're too broken to fit in anywhere else. And some of that's true. Some of that's always true. But what they don't understand is that broken people know how to recognize broken things. We know what it looks like when something's been beat down and neglected and abandoned. And when we see it, we can't just ride past. It's not a choice. It's just what we do. By Thursday, we had a crew. 8 bikers originally, now 14 strong, and that was just the first wave. Word had spread through our club like fire through dry wood. There was an elderly woman on Elm Street who'd been forgotten, and we were remembering her. That's something that changes when you're part of a crew. It's not just about you anymore. It's about all of us. Diesel took charge of the furnace. He spent 4 hours in the basement with a flashlight and tools and replacement parts, talking to himself about what he was finding down there. Rusted pipes, a furnace that was older than most of our patches, electrical work that looked like it had been held together with hope and duct tape. None of it was good. But Diesel's the kind of guy who fixes things because he can't stand broken things sitting around, and by Friday afternoon, heat was coming through the vents. Real heat. Warm heat that made the house breathe again. We opened the living room window just to feel the difference, just to prove to Vivian that it was actually working. Truck found us a roofer through one of his connections, and that man came for 2 days straight, working through rain and wind, patching holes, replacing shingles, doing the kind of work that nobody sees but everybody depends on. And when he was done, the roof wasn't leaking anymore. No more buckets catching water in the living room. No more Vivian having to think about rain and worry. No more lying in bed, listening to drips, and wondering how many more years the house could survive. Quinn worked with another biker named Marcus on the front door. They brought new hinges, real steel hinges, and they brought a solid oak door because Quinn said, if we're doing it right. They worked outside in the cold, talking and laughing, and when they were done, that door hung straight and true and closed with a solid click that sounded like promise. The inside of the house got attention too. We brought in supplies, real supplies, proper groceries that filled the cupboards, meat and vegetables, and eggs and milk, and bread that wasn't the end-of-week discount bread. We brought in bedding because she'd been sleeping on a couch for so long she didn't even remember what a real mattress felt like. We brought in a new mattress and set up a bedroom on the first floor with fresh paint on the walls, a color Vivian got to choose. She picked a pale blue, like sky, and we painted it on a Saturday with music playing from one of the bikers' portable speakers. We brought paint and fixed walls. We brought a woman who was one of Truck's relatives, and she spent a day teaching Vivian how to use a smartphone so she could call us anytime she needed something. "What if I need something at night?" Vivian asked when they were setting it up. "You call," the woman said simply. 3 in the morning, you call. It's what family does. I want to be clear about something. We didn't do this because we're heroes. People only see the leather, and they think they know what we are. They think we're bad news. They think we're the kind of people who do things because we're looking for credit or looking to feel good about ourselves. They think we're doing this because we want to be seen as the good guys. That's not how this works. We stopped that rainy afternoon because that's what you do. You don't drive past somebody who can barely carry groceries home. That's not about being noble. That's about being human. That's about understanding that the world is getting smaller and people are getting more alone, and somebody's got to say no to that. And once we saw what Vivian was living with, we couldn't unsee it. Our brains don't work that way. You see that. You carry it with you forever. By the following Tuesday, exactly 1 week after we'd pulled over on Morrison Street, we had established a system. One biker would check on Vivian every single day. Just a quick stop. Nothing formal. Sometimes it was just 5 minutes. Diesel would come by and make sure the furnace was still running right. Truck would swing past to see if she needed anything from the store. Quinn would sit and have coffee with her and tell her about his week. Marcus brought her a cat, this orange tabby thing that had been hanging around the warehouse, and Vivian named her Penny because she was the color of old copper. "Cats are good," Truck said when he found out. "They don't expect conversation, but they make you less lonely." Some days, it was riders we hadn't even met before, bikers from other chapters who'd heard the story and wanted to help. Some days, Vivian didn't want to see anybody, and we respected that too. Respect is what you give to family, and she was family now. On Sundays, we brought dinner, full dinners, real food. Truck's wife started cooking on Sunday afternoons. She'd make roasted chicken with crispy skin or beef stew that had been simmering all day, or lasagna with 3 kinds of cheese, and we'd show up with it warm in containers, and Vivian would set the table like it was Thanksgiving, and we'd all sit together and eat. The smell of that food in her house was something different. It was life saying hello. The first time we did that, Vivian cried. Not breaking down crying, just tears running down her face while she was eating her food, being quiet about it. Truck was sitting next to her, and he reached over and squeezed her hand, and nobody said anything about the tears, because we all understood what the tears meant. They meant somebody was remembering her. They meant somebody was saying, "You matter. You matter enough that we're going to show up every single day and prove it to you." She kept that first Sunday dinner in her memory, like it was a photograph she could look at whenever things got dark. She told me about it weeks later, how surprised she was that people would come back, that they'd come back more than once. That's the thing people don't understand about bikers. We talk about brotherhood and loyalty like it's some kind of club code. But it's not a code. It's a reality. It's the understanding that you don't leave people behind. You don't pass somebody on the side of the road and forget about them. You stop. You look. And if they need help, you help. Not because you expect anything in return. Not because you want to be heroes. But because you've been on that road yourself, and you know what it feels like to be invisible. 2 months later, I was sitting with Vivian in her living room. The place was transformed, warm, lit well. The walls had been painted a soft yellow, the color of morning light. New furniture had been brought in, donated from club members' homes, good solid pieces that didn't cost anything but meant everything. A bookshelf with books in it, a coffee table, a real television that someone had hooked up to cable. She was sitting in a recliner that Marcus had brought, and she was holding a cup of tea that Truck's wife had taught her how to make properly, with honey and lemon. "Why did you do all this?" she asked me. Not like she was ungrateful, like she was still trying to understand the mechanics of kindness, like it was a language she'd never learned. "Because we could," I said. "Because you deserved it. Because nobody should have to carry their groceries home in the rain and then go home to a falling apart house. That's not how it's supposed to work. But you didn't know me." "We know you now," I said, "and we're not going anywhere. This isn't a one-time thing. This is permanent. You're part of the crew now. That means someone shows up every day. That means Penny's gonna have somebody to feed her. That means you're not alone anymore." Vivian was quiet for a long time. I could see something shifting in her eyes. The understanding that the world had changed, that she had changed, that she wasn't living in the same story anymore. The walls of that room that had been her prison for so long were now just walls. They weren't holding her anymore. "I was so ashamed," she said finally. "I let things go for so long. I let myself go. I didn't know how to ask for help, and after a while, I didn't remember how to ask. It became like I didn't deserve help, like I'd made these choices and I had to live with them." "You didn't have to ask," I told her. "We saw you. That's all that mattered. That moment on Morrison Street when Truck looked at you and you looked back at him, that was the only permission we needed. We saw a person in trouble and we stopped. Everything else was just the logical thing to do after that." Penny jumped up on Vivian's lap and she started stroking the cat's fur. And for a moment, she was just an old woman with a cat. And that was everything. The road teaches you one thing if you stay on it long enough. You learn that you don't leave people behind. Not people, not animals, not anybody or anything that needs help. The road teaches you that every person you pass is someone's mother or father or sister or brother. And every person you help is everybody. It's all connected. You push on one end, it affects the other end. You help one person, you're helping everybody, whoever cares about that person. You save one life, you save 100 lives because of all the lives that person touches. Vivian's house is warm now. She's got food in her cupboards, real food, with variety, with color. She's got people who show up on her doorstep every single day. Not because they have to, not because they're obligated, but because she matters, because she's one of us now. She's got Sunday dinners and a phone that connects her to 14 different bikers who've all written her number in their phones with a note that says, "Call anytime, day or night." I went by last week, and she was on the front porch with Truck and Marcus, and they were laughing about something. Vivian was making fun of Marcus's haircut, saying he looked like he'd gotten stuck in a wind tunnel, and I could hear her laugh from half a block away. That sound meant everything. It meant she was alive in a way she hadn't been before. It meant the world was recognizing her again. This is what happens when you stop. When you see somebody who needs help, and you don't just keep riding past. This is what happens when you build a life that's about more than yourself. This is what happens when you understand that the leather and the chrome and the road, that's all just the frame. The real thing, the important thing, is the brotherhood. It's showing up. It's remembering. It's refusing to let anybody disappear. People only see the leather. They see the tattoos and the bikes and the patches, and they make assumptions. They think we're dangerous. They think we're broken. They think we're running from something. And maybe some of that's true, but here's the truth they don't see unless they look close. We're the people who stop. We're the people who remember when everybody else has forgotten. We're the people who understand that you take care of your family, and your family is bigger than just blood. Family is anybody who's been left behind by the world, anybody who's been forgotten, anybody who's carrying their groceries home in the rain with nobody to help them. Vivian knows that now. She knows what it means to be remembered. She knows that there are people who will show up on her doorstep every single day just because she matters, just because she's worth their time. And we do this every week. Every single week. Truck says it's going to be forever, and when Truck says forever, he means it. He's kept the same promise for 42 years, and he's not going to break it now. Not for a woman he met in the rain, carrying groceries home, asking for nothing. Not for Vivian. That's what you do. That's what we do. We stopped because that's what you do when you're human and you see somebody in trouble. We stopped because we couldn't unsee her. And everything after that was just what happened when good people decided that one person's loneliness was everybody's problem to solve. When we decided that forgetting was not an option. When we decided that she mattered, that she was worth stopping for. That's the road, man. That's the brotherhood. That's what we're about.